Welcome to Carry the Mat, where we pursue meaning in life, legacy, and leadership. Join us as we seek to learn some of life's most difficult yet valuable hard-earned lessons from men and women who have experienced obstacles and victories firsthand, striving to serve one another based on our unique, God-given abilities, not interested in merely talking about it, but determined to be about it. If that sounds like you, then let's carry the mat together. Every man dies, but not every man truly lives. Now to your hosts, Ben Brandenburg and Daniel Moss. This is Carry the Mat.
All right. Well, welcome in. Welcome to another week of Carry the Mat. I'm Ben. This is Daniel. And we've got my good friend, Jarryd Wallace, with us tonight. Jarryd, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks, bro. Super pumped to hang out with you guys tonight. We're going to have a good time.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk with you, man. We've known each other for a minute, but I know your dad first. Women's tennis coach at the University of Georgia. They actually had a little clinic for our family. I'll probably try to touch a little bit on that. And Meg won. She was some SEC Player of the Year this year, and she's been somebody our household's been pulling really hard for. And really cool to see your dad get 800 wins as a head man. That's quite the feat.
Yeah, I think he's in her GOAT status at this point.
He's a stud.
800 victories, 38 years as a head coach, 4 times National Coach of the Year. It's pretty impressive what he's been able to accomplish during his career. So, yeah, it's been fun to watch.
Well, cool, man. Well, tell us a little bit about you and just growing up. I know you're a local kid, went to Oconee County High School, and tell us about growing up here. Obviously, your dad growing up in that kind of in a coach's household. Tell us a little bit about your family that's under the roof right now that you're sitting in, and just share with us a little bit about you.
Totally, man. Yeah. So obviously, with dad being a head coach at the University of Georgia for 38 years, Athens has been home for my entire life. We decided to stay here as a family, once I left the house and got married, but love this place, love this community. My parents both went to the University of Georgia. My mom was a Canadian national champion runner, all conference runner at the University of Georgia, came down on a full scholarship here. She was a distance runner. She was actually one of the first, I think she was here the first year that the women's track team even existed. Herschel Walker came and they started a women's track team because Herschel Walker wanted to come to Georgia, but his sister ran
Veronica.
track and she needed
to
come in. So Veronica Walker,
quite the recruiting
kind of
tactic
story there.
Yeah,
it tells a lot about how good of a football player he was. And he was like, if y'all start a track program, we'll come.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Athens has always been home. As a coach's kid, you kind of grow up thinking that you're going to live in a bunch of different towns throughout your life and your childhood. It's just kind of more common than not. And as we just discussed, Dad was pretty good at what he does, and so we've been able to stay in one town the whole life, which is amazing. Athens has been an amazing place to be to grow up in, and I bleed red and black, go Dogs through and through. So it's been kind of a cool town to now be able to raise my kids in. I had a typical upbringing, I would say. We were grew up in the church, very involved in the community, very active, as an athlete in a lot of different sports. Dad being a tennis coach, I leaned in that direction. I played tennis competitively all the way till I was 15 years old. I was top 100 in the country at points during my career. So tennis was always something that I kind of thought I was going to do long term, and running was always something we did as a family for fitness and fun, but it was never something I actually kind of like really pursued in sport or in school in any capacity. When I went to high school, I decided to run cross country my freshman year just to stay in shape, really, for tennis more than anything, and try something new, to meet some friends. We changed schools, so it was like the way I could hang out with people over the summer and kind of get my feet wet with the school system before kind of going in blind, if you will. So was excited to kind of experience that. Well, I ended up having a pretty good freshman year run. I got 10th in state and was like, man, maybe I should give this running thing a go a little bit more seriously. So my sophomore year, I laid down the tennis racket and pursued running fully, and was able to win 2 individual state titles my junior year, and signed to run track at the University of Georgia, following in my mom's footsteps, which was pretty crazy. And for me, a huge dream, is to just to compete at the collegiate level, but even the cherry on the top was at the same university, my parents' alma mater, and kind of getting to live out that legacy. But my life kind of took a little bit of a turn my junior year, and sometimes life doesn't always go the way that you expect, and that was definitely the case for me.
Yeah, good genes in your family. I mean, your mom obviously being a runner, your dad being the tennis extraordinaire, and your sister. Tell us about your sister now. Loverly Gray, right?
Yeah. So
I mentioned that to your dad one time, and he was like, "Oh, you mean Brittany?" He completely he immediately just humbled her, And I was like, "Yeah, Brittany." I mean,
yeah,
I'd heard of her
goes
from my
by
sister-in-law, and yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, she goes by Loverly Gray for most people, but we still call her Brittany around our house. Yeah, she's social media extraordinaire. She's in the fashion industry, has over 1 million followers, has really created an amazing brand for herself. Built around this concept that she's had since she was a kid, which I want to dress really nice and look really good, but I don't want to spend a lot of money doing it. And so, when she got a little bit older and she did some modeling, and she kind of saw the industry a little bit, and was like, man, there's a huge niche here and a huge opportunity. And I walked away from an amazing job in Atlanta. We all thought she was crazy. And she started this blog, and began telling a story of, hey, like, you don't have to spend, thousands of dollars wearing the brand name stuff. Like, you can look just as good, and, feel just as good spending, going to Target, and buying stuff off the shelves there. And so that was kind of how she built her brand, and it's exploded. And it's cool to see her use her platform to help a lot of people feel confident about themselves and who they are, and just to continue to do what she's been gifted, which is just to share her life and her stories and the realness and rawness of her experiences with people. So it's been really cool to see. I think both of us in our own respects have unique platforms in today's, society, if you will, that, gives us an opportunity to share a story and to tell a story that maybe we otherwise wouldn't have, going down maybe a more traditional route. So very, very fortunate, that we both have that kind of outlet. And, I obviously wouldn't be where I am right now in my career, without my wife, who I've known for over a decade, and we've been married for coming up on 7 years. We got 2 kiddos at the house. One's 3.5, Levi, and another little boy, Colton, who's 4 months old. So we got our hands full for sure. All hands on deck here at the Wallace house, but we're having a blast. And it's been a fun transition season in life, having kiddos.
Jarryd, did you meet your wife at Oconee High School, or was that a Georgia thing? Or
that was a Georgia thing. So yeah, she actually we met her senior year at Georgia. I spoke at a church in Atlanta, and we kind of connected through mutual friends through that event, and thought she was pretty awesome, and asked her out on a date, and lunch turned to coffee turned to, head to Atlanta to hang out with friends. We spent the whole day together, and, the rest was history, as they say. So, it was cool. We were both in a season of life when we got introduced where, I was training for the games in Rio in 2016. We met in the end of 2013, and she had just taken a job to go to Nashville and do Teach for America. It was a 2-year commitment. So both of us were kind of on a pre-2-year commitment before we had met each other. And we had to kind of have a serious conversation, say, hey, do one of us need to kind of step away and, us pursue our relationship? And we both really just felt like God had called us before we met each other, and that if we were supposed to be together, he would be faithful through that journey. And he was still working on each of us individually, and it was really important for us to go through those, journeys alone, but walking alongside each other as, as boyfriend and girlfriend in that time, and for the last year as fiancés, and when we got married shortly after that 2-year commitment ended for both of us. So it was really neat to see the Lord's faithfulness in that, where we both felt confident and clear from him that we were supposed to walk through the path that he'd asked us to before we met, but also at the same time allow us to kind of grow closer and prepare ourselves for each other, when that time came.
Okay, Jarryd, you mentioned Leah. Okay, tell us about what she does. I know she's a very wise nutritionist, and how that has upped your game, and how y'all brought that into your family, and how y'all live, just eat super clean and pursue that Pura Vida.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, she worked for Teach for America for about 4 or 5 years, and during COVID stepped away from that position, and we had our oldest little boy, and just kind of in a season of transition, wanted to be with him for a while, but she also wanted to do something that stimulated her mind, and she went back to school. She's always been really passionate about nutrition and helping people just kind of change their lifestyle through food, and just create a healthier and better relationship with food. And so she went back to school and knocked that out and crushed it, and got an integrative nutrition degree, and he started her own business. Has been basically helping people. Her kind of vision of her business is, if I can help change the mom, and how the 30 to 50-year-old woman, how they view and see food, I can change a family. If you change a family, you can change a generation, change multiple generations. And so she's been able to help a ton of people, and just have a lot of really great perspective. And obviously, as a professional athlete, for me, it's kind of nice to have a full-time nutritionist in the house. Sometimes it's like having being a yard guy and going home, you have the worst yard. Sometimes she's like, I don't want to do your nutrition, I've been doing other people's nutrition all day. But the benefit is that she cooks phenomenally, and so I just get to benefit from obviously her knowledge and expertise there. So yeah, it's been really cool to see her. Again, you take your gift and take your passion, but the heartbeat behind it is the service, right? She wants to help people have a better experience, feel better about themselves, and she's a perfect person to walk through that with people. She's really empathetic and serving, as just a huge servant heart. So it's really fun to watch her light up when she gets to see clients have really positive influences and impacts.
Well, so what would your wife say at the fact that today as a snack I put some tortilla chips on a plate and sprinkled some cheddar cheese on top and threw it in the microwave for 30 seconds? Is that eating healthy and eating clean?
Man, everything in moderation is what I always say when I do something like that. She probably would not encourage it as a typical snack. But hey, if it's cheat day, man, you do you, bro. You do you.
That's good to have her on your team, though. I mean, she's like another coach, I mean, that's pretty cool that y'all have got that, and that she's helping you with your career. Speaking of career, we'll obviously going to get to that portion, but take us back to, growing up in Oconee. You mentioned running, giving up tennis. You mentioned running. Talk to us about how you were training as a distance runner and what happened, I guess, your senior year, and kind of take us from there into, take us through that chapter of life.
Yeah. So I signed to run track at the University of Georgia. Coming out of my junior year, going to my senior year, I was super stoked to be able to follow my parents' footsteps, B, to be able to have an opportunity to defend state titles that I'd won the year before, hopefully have a healthy cross country season. And during cross country, I had this nagging injury, and it had been the same thing I dealt with. I'd been dealing with a nagging injury from sophomore year, junior year, and hadn't really been able to have a full healthy season. In spite of that, I was still able to run and perform well. And I said, kind of, hey, guys, like mom and dad, if I'm going to have a, collegiate career of any capacity, like I have to be able to train consistently. Am I injury prone, or is something else going on? Like, can we just like go get a second opinion from a doc? Let's just figure this out. And so we went to a doctor. We ultimately found out I had something called chronic exertional compartment syndrome. It's fancy medical term for saying that too much pressure built up in my calves was cutting off nerve function and blood flow to my foot. And the only way to get rid of it was either to stop running, which for me was not an option at that time, or to have surgery and to release the fascia that basically surrounds the muscle and create room for the pressure to escape and to help that, from occurring. It felt and feels a lot like a stress fracture or like or shin splints. So every time it happened, I just thought I had shin splints. I'd take some time off and come back. But what we found out is it was a muscular issue, not a structural issue. So I decided to, learn a little bit more about that disease, for lack of a better term. And they basically said, listen, man, you have the surgery. It's 6-week active recovery. You're back. You're pain-free, good to go. And it should never come back again. And so, my mind, I'm like, man, I take 6 weeks off for what I thought was shin splints. So this is a no-brainer. I'll take the same time off and, be back pain-free. And, senior year, I get to crush it, defend state titles, go off to a collegiate career and, see what happens. So, went in and electively had the surgery done, finished the surgery. 4 days later, went into Mike Dew over at the University of Georgia, and him and Chicken Hawk unwrapped the bandage. Yeah, Mike and Chicken Hawk, come on now. But they unwrapped the bandage and something didn't look right. They kind of were like, this is, we've seen post-ops before. This isn't supposed to look the way it looked. And the leg was really swollen and miscolored. And so like, we think you guys need to go back to, the doc and figure out what's going on here. So we realized ultimately I had complications in that first surgery. I spent the next 2.5 years at a total of 10 reconstructive surgeries to save my leg, 60% of the muscle from my knee down. Yeah, 10 surgeries. Yeah, so we went through a lot of transitions. I went from being 17, 18-year-old, pretty much the next 5 years of my life figured out. Georgia athlete, timing wise, would have been preparing for the trials, for London, like was just ready to kind of ramp things up. And where I found myself was, in a hospital bed for 22 days with a deformed limb and conversations of it maybe being amputated, me having, some type of, virus that we've never heard of before. I mean, it was a crazy out of body experience, that ultimately ended in me, basically having to make probably one of the hardest decisions I think any 19-year-old would have to make, especially with the trajectory that I was hoping my life to go on.
What caused it to get to that point? Was it before surgery, what you were initially dealing with, or did something go wrong during the procedure?
Yeah, there were complications ultimately that occurred that created kind of the snowball effect that we had to kind of go through the process of limb salvage. Is the kind of the simplest and easiest way to kind of explain it.
Take us back to that reality as that was setting in of where you were mentally and how, can't speak for you, but for myself that, at 18, you hadn't experienced a lot of adversity in the sense of hard living at that point. Talk a little bit about how that probably I would imagine felt like a train wreck.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head with, you're just so young still. There just hasn't been a lot of life experience and trauma. I had to grow up really quick. I had to hope to learn things, at a lot younger age than I was prepared for. And, when I think about that moment, the first like 3 or 4 months, man, I was a rock star. I was like, this is going to be fine. Like, we're going to figure this thing out. Like 7 surgeries in, my legs are wide open. I'm like, dude, we'll walk. Like, we're good. Like, let's roll through this thing. Like, we just need a couple skin grafts there, a couple stitches, sew me up, get me back on the track. Like, I was just like, as positive as I could be. Like, mom and
yeah,
dad.
You're naturally a positive guy.
Reality perspective.
I could see that. Yeah.
Totally. And so that's like me. I'm like, man, I'm riding this positive train until the cows come home because that's all I know what to do, and when I feel out of control, sometimes my first inclination is like, let's set a crazy goal and let's just go for it, and let's be as positive and driven as possible. And so I applied that in this moment. And there was, gosh, we were like 4 months in, man, I think, to this process. And I was doing rehab 3 hours a morning, every morning, just grinding, trying to get any feeling back in my foot. I mean, I had zero feeling from like my mid shin down. My legs were wide open. I was wearing wound vacs. I could barely move my, toes. It was just a lot wasn't working. They removed parts of my gastroc, most all of my soleus and peroneals, like anything that moved the foot, down and in was basically like there, and anything that moved my foot up and out was basically gone. And so what ultimately happened is my foot just basically got stuck in this position. It's like you've got your bicep and your tricep, extension and curl. And it's like if you remove one of them, your arm's going to get stuck in one of the opposite positions. And that's basically what was happening with my foot. So it didn't matter how much strength I was doing. It wasn't responding to it. Right. And so, I got to this point where I realized, I woke up one morning. I mean, I remember it like it was yesterday. We went to church. It was a Sunday. It was a spring day. It was beautiful. Normally on Sundays, I'd come home from church, eat some lunch, hang out for a little bit, and I'd go for a long run and just like let my mind clear for the week. And it's kind of my time for myself. And it hadn't been like the first time that I wasn't able to do that, but it was the first time where it hit me. It was like, I may never be able to run again. And my life has drastically changed from the place I thought it was going to be to where I am. I'm addicted to pain meds. I'm living with my family because I can't survive on my own right now. I need constant help. And I just, man, I lost it. I remember walking out of the house, and we lived like less than a mile from the high school track, and I walked up took me a long time to get there, but I was walking at that point and walked up to the school, and the track was open, and I went into the track and I got on the starting line, and I was just determined as all get out to run. And I took off, and it probably took me like 4 minutes to get all the way around the track. And I was in so much pain, and something that took me 48 seconds to do before is taking me 4 minutes to do. And I crossed the finish line, and I just remember just bawling, and I was angry, I was hurt. The weight of the reality of was setting in, and I was so angry, dude. I was so angry at God. I was so angry at my present state. I was so angry that I was, just out of control. And I remember, in that moment, I yelled, and I was like, God, if this is kind of God you are, I don't want anything to do with you. And I literally said, I'm done with you. And I left the track and walked home, and that was the beginning of almost 18 months, almost 2 years of what I'll say was my season of running from God. And I hit a point where I wasn't good, and I wasn't good with whatever he was doing, and I wanted to give it a shot on my own. And it was a hard day, but looking back now, it almost in God's wisdom, I feel like at the time I was naive enough to think that my actions of running from God meant that God left me. But the reality is that God is faithful, and he sustains, and he perseveres, and he is constant, and he is always ever present. And no matter how hard I tried to run from him, he was there. And I maybe wasn't looking for him. I maybe wasn't responding to him. I maybe wasn't interested, but he was there. And it took me through that season of life, and kind of getting to a rock bottom place where I kind of turned back and said, I've tried for this long, God, I gotta give this back to you now, man. Like, this isn't working. My plan's not working. that I realized then, man, he was always here. He was always there every step of the way. He was always there. He was just waiting for me to stop running from him and start running with him and for him. And that
Is
was the
there
call.
is there a point that you can maybe talk about that made you realize or brought you back to that, to where you felt like you had that moment where it's like, okay, I can't do this on my own. I'm tired of running. I'm running myself thin. Like, when did you get to that point? How long did that last?
Yeah, it was about 18 months or so, and yeah, I can absolutely pinpoint that moment. And it's super silly to think about now. Um, but again, this is just goes back to God knew me and knew my heart and knew it would break me. After all the surgeries and hardships and things that I'd been through, it was a breakup of all things that kind of sent me off the you know off the deep end or the rock bottom that brought me back to Him. And I was kind of getting near the end of exhaustion of running from God, and I you know started going back to church a little bit, and I met this girl that I'd known for a long time, and it was a Christian girl. I was like, man, okay. I started going to church with her and hanging out. I was like, all right, God, I'm kind of using this girl to get closer to you. And things are feeling good. And she came over one night, and it was the night I was going to tell her that I loved her, and like was super nervous. And like she did dinner, whole thing. And like I was kind of all nervous and anxious, and so I wasn't really aware of things. She kind of was too, and so I was like thinking we're on the same page. Well, we weren't. She kind of said, like, beat me to the punch, and was like, I've been praying about a relationship and just don't feel like the Lord wants us to be together anymore. And like the little boy inside me is like, but I love you.
Okay, yeah.
Like, but at the same time, it's like, that is not what I expected. And so literally, like, she said goodbye, and I like crow hop punched the wall, and I was just like, gloves are off, man. And I like had it with God. I was like, bro, I was trying to use this girl to get closer to you. Like, I like feel like we're moving in the right direction. Like, you must just not want me to be happy. Like, you've now taken the two things that I've ever loved outside of my family away from me, running and now her. Like, what's the deal? And man, I like just felt his presence in that moment, and it literally was like this like feeling of like, Jarryd, I'm right here. Like,
Bro,
I have always
he
been right here.
yeah, he was using you. He was putting a flame in you.
Yeah, and that's it. And he knew, again, like, this is where God just knows. He knows your heart. He knows, what you need in those moments. And even, man, I just look back in that season of 18 months. I mean, I made a lot of really dumb decisions during that season of life, but God has used those moments exponentially in sharing and mentoring younger guys, and meeting them where they are and saying, oh, you did that? Hey, guess what? Me too. Oh, you feel that? Well, guess what? This is what God did in my life in this situation when that happened to you. Like, you are not strange or abandoned or alone, and God is real, and he can continue to work in and through you. And but man, it was necessary. And I needed to walk through that darkness and feel alone, to know and be able to look back and realize that I wasn't.
Yeah, refiner's fire, man. That's really cool. Um, when did you realize that? Take us through where you realized there was an opportunity in sprinting, in sprints.
Yeah. So kind of interesting. Like, I leave that conversation, if you will, with
Or I
God.
guess let me rephrase that. When did you realize, was it technology, or how did you start
Yeah.
to understand and grasp, hey, I can run with the tools that are out there? When did talk about that realization, I guess, and who brought that to you, and how did you understand that component of everything?
Yeah. So, very quickly after that encounter with God, it was like, all right, God, like, I'm done. Here you go. Whatever you ask me to do, I'm here. Like, use me. And, still in a lot of pain, still have a super deformed limb, still not able to do a whole lot. And so we ended up having this appointment that we had longstanding for a doctor out in, I was Madison, Wisconsin, of all places. And so we fly up there, and I'm sitting in this doctor's office, and he basically looks at me and he's like, man, you have a pretty messed up leg. And I was like, mm-hmm. And he's like, I'm gonna be honest with you, like based on everything you've told me and like who you are and your personality and stuff. He said it's not a matter of if, but a matter of when you lose your leg. He said you have an 8-year-old leg on a 20-year-old's body. And that was like the hardest thing to hear, but there was this underlying like peace, which sounds so weird to say right now, but like there was this like peace that existed there. And he asked me, he goes, what do you want to do with your life? And I was like, man, I just want to be pain free. Like, love to be able to run, but like just pain free, live a normal life, have some kids, be able to coach their soccer team, play with them in the yard. Like, I just want to be normal, dude, you know? And he was like, man, like, I love it, but like not realistic with the leg you've got. But if you consider having your leg amputated, like with technology and everything that's available these days, like you can do those things. And I left that office being like, I'm gonna have my leg amputated. Like this,
it was that quick, huh? Yeah.
This is it. And so much so, I mean, this goes back to my personality, right? I mean, I literally get it to the hotel an hour later and I'm Googling like Paralympic track and field, running as an amputee, like world record lists. Like, I'm doing this thing, like, let's go. You know, again, I'm like, when I don't know what to do, I'm just going to set a goal and we're going to rock and roll after
chapter.
Yeah, that's incredible.
But God's still refining, right? I mean, he was still there, that there were still actions that had to be taken. You know, and so we spent the next 4 months researching prosthetic companies, trying to find a doctor who would amputate a leg that was, you know, semi-functioning, but not like ideal. And we finally found a guy, and I went into surgery, and like, this is a cool story kind of looking back. And again, this is just huge God's faithfulness. Like my parents through this 4-month process were still just like, are you sure? Are you sure? Like, once you go into that OR, like there's no like I changed my mind thing here. Like they can't sew it back on. Like this is kind of a big decision. And man, I just had such a peace that this was where God wanted me. This was the decision he wanted me to make. This is the purpose and the plan and the whole deal. And so we're going to the OR, and every surgery that I'd ever had, the amputation was surgery number 11. And every surgery I ever had, I have a Bible that I took in and I put on my chest, and I basically just keep on, you know, sometimes they move it, but you know, I'm like, I want it on me or around me for all these surgeries, right? And so I had the Bible, and then my parents would always pray over me before they wheeled me off. And we're sitting in the room, and we're at, you know, in Indianapolis getting ready to go into surgery in the OR, and nurse come in, hey, we're about 5 minutes out and we're going to roll you out, but back, you know, just want to give you a heads up. Great, cool. And I look, and my mom and dad are in the room, my sister's in the room, and there's this slight fear and concern that was in their eyes. And in that moment, God basically was like, it's your turn. And I got to pray over my family before I went into surgery, and got to basically ask God to give them the peace that he had been given me. And for the first time, what they saw in my eyes, the previous 10 surgeries, the fear, the unknown, the uncertainty, and they were praying for God to remove. The role was reversed, because I knew confidently I was sitting in the favor and providential will of the Lord, and was able to, in that moment, to the best of my ability, say, God, I don't need this strength anymore. I'm going in. You got me. Give that to my folks. Give them that peace during this, you know, 8-hour procedure, that they can, endure this, and that we're going to, come out of this, better than ever.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. God.
I don't think, I mean, it speaks to your character, but to be to be as young as you were going through that, and to have that kind of wisdom and knowledge, and yeah, man, I'm blown away by that. And that's really
It's
cool. Go ahead.
it's there's no there's no other explanation than Jesus there,
Yeah.
right? Like if I try, like if man tries to comprehend emotionally in that moment, if a psychologist tries to like dissect what's happening there, like it's incomprehensible. Like the only way that I had the amount of peace that I had as a 20-year-old kid going in to electively have his leg amputated with no certainty of what things would look like beyond that. Like I had goals of doing really cool things, but there was no guarantee for this, right? I mean, it was hope of being pain free. It was hope of having a somewhat of a normal life. It was hope of being able to walk pain free. It was hope of maybe being able to run again. I had no idea what God was up to. And that's like the coolest thing about when we get to a place in our lives where we can let go and trust God's provision and his will, and just say, God, your will, your way. And it's mind blowing, because I look at the goals that I had in my life before I made the decision to have my leg amputated, and then I look at what God has done since that, and I'm like, dude, I like way undersold your capabilities and potential. Like you are unbelievable.
Totally redeemed.
And that's like, and God just wants, yeah, bro, like get out of here. Like he just wants to show up and like use you, and he needs you to be willing.
Right. That's pretty incredible. I mean, I'm still struggling to wrap my head around the thoughts that must have been running through your head during that time, and then maybe talk a little bit about coming out of that surgery. Like, what kind of, where was your mind at when you came out? Like, it's done now. They've done it.
Yeah, you look down. I mean,
and you're still 20, and like.
So I'll tell you a funny story of just like immediately after. So I get rolled into the room, and it was a long recovery. It took me a little while to get out of anesthesia, and I was gone for about 12 hours by the time it was, so mom and dad, of course, were just like losing their minds, so nervous, and just like wanted to see me, as, of course, right, as any parent would. And so I finally get rolled into the room, and they were just being extra cautious, which was great. I was fine, everything was good, but they roll me into my bedroom, and nurse comes in, and they're, everybody's kind of getting ready. Mom and dad are standing up at the end of the bed. Everybody's kind of looking, and when you're in bed, you put your feet in the bed, and you're up at, got both your feet sticking up in the sheets, or you got two feet down there. Well, now my end of my bed looks like this, where I got one foot sticking up, and nothing else on the other side, and there's some extra space there at the end of the bed as well. And so mom comes, and just trying to console, of course, and so she comes and sits down on the end of the bed where my foot typically would be. And as soon as she sits down, I'm like, oh, mom, I'll get up. She like jumps up out of the bed, like freaks out, and I just start dying laughing. And I'm like, I'm just kidding, mom. My foot's not there. Like, we're good. And the nurses were just like, oh, okay, he's good. This kid's going to be all right.
Great.
Like everybody was a little somber, and
yeah.
And I mean, it was just again in that moment, like humor was a way to just kind of let everybody know, like, I'm okay. And it was like I needed to do that, because there was still a little bit of unknown. Is he really okay? What's going on? How's he doing? And I just needed them to know, like, guys, I'm good. We're good. Everything is okay. So that was, I mean, funny, right? A little funny story, just like right out the gate. But I had goals. I went to the prosthetist. We went to the surgeon. He said, you can walk. The earliest you can walk is 6 weeks after surgery. You have to keep your head above your heart for 2 weeks. So I had to lay elevated for 2 weeks. It was a lot of couch time. Thankfully, it was during the World Cup in 2010, so it was great. Watched every
Perfect.
match. It was awesome. Good timing. Wimbledon rolled right into it, so we were really doing great at the Wallace household, just vibing on all the sports. But 6 weeks in a day came, and your boy was up walking, and it was 3 months after I ran on my first running prosthetic. 12 months after I ran my first race in the 100-meter dash, won the race, qualified for nationals, made the team to go to the Pan Am Games. So within 16 months from amputation, I was wearing not UGA across my chest, but USA, representing the US at the Pan Am Games. I go down there and I run the fastest time in the world that year in the 100-meter dash, and I win the gold medal.
Wow.
Dude, that's so cool, man. Congratulations, man. I don't know what else to say. That is incredible.
We're just really big fans, Jarryd. Oh my gosh, man.
That's awesome.
What a guy. What a guy. I'm impressed too, man. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, that's just unbelievable story.
Just an absolute grinder. I mean,
yeah. I can so see that though, about how, he gave you 6 weeks or whatnot, and you were right there waiting. Okay, I'll wait 6 weeks, but I'm not waiting a day longer than that.
You basically get to the point you're like, screw this.
Yeah.
Like,
okay, Doc. We got you. I hear you.
Timeline's up, man. We're good.
I've got a lot of questions though about, once you get the blade on, obviously you're getting fitted for this stuff. I mean, from a sensory standpoint, kind of walk people through, we can't put ourselves in your shoes. I mean, we can't, on how that feels on any of it. One, to run that fast, and two, the prosthetic component of sensory. Like how did you have times where you were getting fitted and you tripped, and you're racing, and times where you couldn't get the blade right, or walk us through that, the obstacles and struggles of settling in and getting comfortable and confident and running with it, and running full tilt and really digging in.
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, I mean, I've kind of, I mean, we'll just call it, for lack of a better term, I've just called it my new normal. Is kind of the catchphrase I've used. It's catch all in anything, right? I haven't found anything that I wasn't able to do before that I can't do now. I just have to do some things different. And it maybe looks different, or it's not quite exactly what I want, or and it's just the new normal, and you kind of adapt and move around it accordingly. Wearing a prosthetic is unique. I don't sleep in it. I take it off at night. I put it on in the morning. I keep it on all day for the most part. I have a couple different legs, one that I shower in, one that I have when I'm at the beach. I've got my everyday leg that I wear most of the time. I've got one that I run in. I have a different foot for when I lift, so there's just all these little intricacies that, going in was like, okay, I knew I'd be able to do all of these activities again, but I would need like devices and other legs to assist me in doing that. So it's like, I always joke with people. I'm like, listen, like if I'm just chilling on my everyday walking leg and all of a sudden someone starts chasing me, or we got to run somewhere, like, I can't be like, excuse me, guys, can we time out? I need to change into my running leg real quick before we keep doing this thing. Like that's not an option. So, there's some things where it's just like, you just kind of deal with it. But if I had $1 for every time I've broken a foot, I've broken feet sprinting full speed, and just thing snaps in half, and one stride your leg's there, and the next one you're face first on the track, chewing gravel. And it's just part of it. You said, like, how do you get to a point where you trust it to go full tilt? Like you kind of just have to turn that switch off and just say, it's going to be here most of the time, but like anything, it has the ability to not operate in its, always in its perfect form. And, you always know that that's the case, but you could get an accident when you get in your vehicle, but you choose to get in the car and drive to work every day. You can let the fear overrule you, or you can just say, hey, this is just part of life.
No, that's a really good point. I mean, obviously you have faced things that I cannot relate to, but I mean, it's just like anything else, man. Life comes at you fast, and every second you walk out the door, you're risking it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and there's just what I'm gonna absolutely butcher scripture. I'm gonna try to quote where it's at, but I mean, when does worrying add another day to your life? I don't know where that's exactly said, but like the whole point there is like, maybe it's Ecclesiastes, I don't know. But the whole point is like, worrying does nothing. It does nothing for you. And so, I try my best. Man, I feel like crazy at this all the time. But I try my best to not to live in the present and to not go 10 miles down the road and try to have all the logistics figured out and plan. And that's hard for me because I am a planner. And I wish I was better at that. There's areas in my life where I feel like I do really good in it. And there's other areas where I'm just vice script. And it's like, man, like, can we not learn, from your life? Like, look down at your leg, Jarryd. Like, look at the process. Like, you've lived it. You know the lessons. And you still kind of walk into those same, the same moments and fall through the same path. But yeah, I mean, you definitely just got to trust the process, and being able to put on this leg every day is a reminder of that for me, and that's a pretty special gift.
Yeah.
You mentioned running for your country. Talk a little bit about that. One, whether it be overseas or competing here in the States, and two, kind of walk us through some of your endorsement opportunities and how you've kind of got your first deal and how you've built that as part of your career.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy. I get paid to work out for a living. I know I'm not the only professional athlete in the world, but it's a pretty
Daniel's
cool gig.
still waiting on his call for that.
Still waiting on the call.
We're waiting for a call. I want you to talk a little bit about Toyota. We're waiting for we love new Tundras. Carry the Mat's going global, and we need new Tundras.
Come
your
on,
trucks, your trucks, sweet.
I know a few people. I definitely know a few people. We can see what we can make happen there for sure.
No, go ahead.
But yeah, it's been a fun career. I've been probably 17, 18 different countries. I've run in all of them. I've competed pretty much for every world or para team since 2010 or 2011, excuse me. So, coming up on 12 years now of a career, and been fortunate enough to win a handful of gold medals in my career, and a few other colors. We don't like to talk about those ones as much. And then, obviously been fortunate to be a world record holder as well. So from an athletic competition side, I mean, I've been so extremely blessed. And, I think, like, to go back for a second, like, thinking about that timeline of recovery from 6 weeks in a day, 3 months, 12 months, 16 months, and being, the best in the world in that time frame. A lot of people are like, man, you're just this crazy athlete. And the reality is I had a absolutely star-studded team of people around me. And what I realized looking back is, if you have a conviction strong enough and a ability to communicate clearly your goals and objectives, people will get behind you and help you move mountains. No one has ever accomplished anything alone. And when I look back at my career and I look back at all the things that I've achieved, it really comes back to the only thing I did well was set a crazy goal and then just speak clearly and confidently enough to other people to get them to buy in and be like, I think this kid's pretty serious. Like, let's see what he does.
Crazy, but let's roll with it.
That's right. Like, I don't know. We'll see what happens. Shot in the dark here. And so, again, to bring kind of back to some of the endorsements, in 2016, I was undefeated for a year going into that. I'd run 10:57 in the 100. No one's ever run that quick wind assisted I think to date there's been one guy that has since then, but it was just I was by far the favorite to win. No one was even close at that point. I get down to Rio and I get a respiratory infection and I'm just sick as a dog. I can't sleep. I'm coughing nonstop. I can't breathe. And I end up getting, it was fifth in the 100. And then we won the gold and broke the world record in the 4x1 a couple nights later. And then we got disqualified for stepping on, when we got stepped on the line one step. And
What
so
leg, what
I
leg
went
was he?
from this, I don't remember. I think it was the third leg.
I was just curious, as if you guys knew.
It was the second leg.
Did y'all know during the race that happened, or did you?
No. Like we didn't find out until we're under the stadium. We've got our medal uniforms on. We're about to go out onto the track, like get our medal, and everything was paused. And we were like, "What happened?" And they told us we're gone. And it was just like,
wow.
What?
Oh my gosh.
And so, my experience in Rio, every game's kind of taught me a lesson, but my experience in Rio was, man, I went in, put the work in, prepared the body, got the mind ready, was ready to go. And then everything out of my control that could have happened negatively happened. And I left Rio, we got married a couple weeks after, my wife and I, and I was ready to give up running. And I was, we were married, and I was exhausted. I was mentally and emotionally defeated, and financially. I hadn't had an endorsement. I hadn't been able to really get my career financially supported without speaking a ton and hustling on races. So I was traveling all the time, racing all the time, and winning races to bring home money. And so, it was like, man, I'm having a family, starting to, need to have some support here. Like, need some consistency. And man, like literally 3 months later, I get in Japan. I get introduced to a team out there for Toyota, and get connected to a team here in the U.S. And literally within 6 months, in a contract with them, and started to run for them. They were my first sponsor, and that quickly transitioned into an apparel contract, the next year. And so it was crazy to just see, because I was ready to walk away, and thankfully I didn't, because that next year at World Champs I won the gold medal, and continued pursuing and having a great career beyond that. But it was really cool to see, again, like the faithfulness of the Lord, right? Because I felt like I was like, the story wasn't done. It wasn't like I wanted to win more races. Like, that's for sure what my career is not about. It was more of like, man, I don't feel like this chapter's over yet, but I don't see a way in which this story continues without a massive intervention. And getting sponsored by the number one sponsor for the Olympic and Paralympic Games was not even close to being on the radar. Like, I didn't have an agent, didn't really know what that was going to look like. And man, like, God showed up and provided in a way that was just so unexpected. And how consistent is that with who he is, right? In the times where we least expect, he shows up and does something immeasurably more. In the times where we count him out, or the times we forget about his faithfulness, he shows up as a reminder of like, I got you. Keep trusting, keep walking, keep being faithful, keep being diligent, keep your hands open.
Man.
Yeah.
You're really like the perfect guest for this podcast. I'll just go ahead and throw that out there, carry the mat. That is really why we called it that. I mean, in the gospel, when they take the guys to the paralytic, Jesus heals the paralytic, and the paralytic can't get into the room to get to Jesus. It's too crowded. 4 friends take it upon themselves to take him to the top of the roof, lower him down to Jesus' feet. And, I'm sure the paralytic is, he's not the one that's pushing everybody. It's the friends that pushed him. But I'm hearing in your story of how you encouraged your family before surgery, and you're one of the few guys that's kind of can empathize with both the guy on the mat and also the friends, because I mean you were able to turn around and reciprocate and encourage others, and you've done your share of carrying through this journey, and but you also had people that along the way that, as you mentioned, that have been in your corner, and Jesus, I mean, when it's in that story, I mean, he's moved by the friend's faith. That's what gets his attention. It's very different from the other healings in the gospel, but yeah. So it's really perfect. I'm so glad that you joined us, man, and it's just I'm encouraged, and I just know you've encouraged a lot of people in your journey, but I like how you took us through kind of when it happened, how you felt then. I mean, being a high octane guy, and naturally,
all gas, no brakes.
yeah. I mean, naturally, you're
What
a
breaks?
upbeat, encouraging guy, and how that, and I'm sure the spiritual attack too, and the that the enemy wanted you to feel down and go in the tank, and but how God redeemed your story, your situation, and used it for His glory and for His kingdom, and that's very evident in your story. And it's easy, I think, to not disqualify, but look back at that chapter. It's easy to say now, like how God's redeemed it, but your journey when you were 18, when it happened, that's not what was going through your head. As you mentioned, it's exceeded your expectations, but that's because you've pressed in, you've lived. The Spirit is in you and is overflowed from you, and I think that's your testimony. Yep. And I mean, still you've got goals too. I mean, I don't know what the age of what's a runner's like age, like as far as like your prime, and like talk to us through that. Is there, I mean, you could be the old, you could be 40 years old and winning these gold medals. I don't know. Tell me about that.
No, the age is definitely in the rearview mirror. We're hanging on here.
Yeah.
We're on our final lap to Paris. So I'm training to get ready for the last games. We'll be retiring in Paris.
Okay.
But again, the reason we're going there is I feel like the story's not over yet. And that doesn't mean that gold medal's the answer, right? Like who knows what God's up to in this journey. And I'm in a position, and I've been for a while now, where I'm not defined by a medal. I'm not defined by a color of a medal. I'm not defined by a success. And what that does is it gives me the ability to go out there and freaking have a blast and put it all on the line and not care at all about what the world says at the end of the day,
right?
Because God is the one that says where my value is. And so it's really, it doesn't change the fact that I want to freaking kick butt and bring home some hardware for the US team. Like that's 100% there. But I can tell you right now that my identity is not there. And, I've always, since I've kind of gotten here, I've really said, how can I be the best example for the kingdom on the track without saying a word? And my solution is, regardless of whether I win the race or lose the race, my response should be the exact same, because I'm not defined by what the clock says or what the place says. And I should, in a way, someone should watch the race and see me and have no idea what place I got and question whether I won or lost because of how I responded in that moment. That's my passion. That's my goal. That's my desire when I compete on the track, is to be able to create that, visual experience of where my hope is in.
Yeah, I think the most important part of your story is the fact that you just keep showing up, keep grinding, and that's an example to so many people. Because, dude, 18, 19, 20 years old, going through what you went through, not many people can do that. I know for sure that I don't have that in me. I think the only thing to explain that is your relationship and your faith with the Lord. But just by showing up, man, you're doing a whole lot of good for folks that get the chance to see you run.
And I got a feeling
No.
after you mentioned Paris, but you'll get into something else cool. I mean, you mentioned how you have to tweak things on how you do things. I mean, you can swing a golf club. I mean, I've seen you when you work out, you're tossing those medicine balls around. I mean, you get some torque in there, and I mean, it doesn't hold you back. But I mean, you get creative, and with anything, I think you're going to attack whatever's next. And I know we've got so much more to talk about with you. I mean, we'll have you back. Maybe we can get in a studio setting and kind of meet face to face and continue the conversation, because I'm encouraged, and I know our listeners will be as well. And I know there's other things I want to ask you, but for the sake of keeping it to where people can actually listen to it in a sitting, we're going to wrap. But
we always go over.
We always go. Liz is probably in the other room saying, "Guys, you gotta go." Yeah, well, tell us about the TED Talk real quick. We'll wrap with that and give us when that drops, and we'll make sure that we push that on our channels and that everybody that touches us, is able to tap into that. Go ahead.
Cool. Yeah, I'll brief on that, and then I want to add one more thing too. Was very fortunate to be able to give a TED Talk recently here at the University of Georgia around this idea of mastering transitions in this process of reality that we are all in transitions in life, and there's not really a formula or a roadmap for what that should look like. And as looking back through my career and my experiences, I feel like the thing that I've done consistently really well is transitioned really well. And so I've been really intentional about putting together a process for this over the past couple of years, and for the first time got to reveal it to the public via a TED Talk. So hopefully we'll be releasing in the next couple of days. So getting some teasers here and there. So it's looking like it's going to come out anytime soon, which I'm really excited about, and would love for you guys to check it out. And it was an amazing experience, and I'm excited to continue to see where those opportunities present themselves. I want to thank you guys for letting me be a part of this, and excited to continue this conversation in studio, as you mentioned, and just thinking about, this idea of carrying the mat and the story you shared, and just kind of the example of where this idea came from. I'm very fortunate in the sense that I have been both on the mat and been carried by the mat, and been carrying the mat. And I think that the reality is neither of the people in that story want to be in those situations. You never want to be carrying your friend on a mat because they can't move. And you never want to be on a mat because you can't do anything. But the common denominator there is the faithfulness that they had, and their eyes were on Jesus. And so the men carrying the mat, the friends carrying the mat, were just so focused on getting to Jesus no matter what it took. And the person on the mat was so humbled and grateful for his friends, and then in awe of who Jesus was. And I think the story there is that there are times when we are on the mat, and there are times when we're carrying the mat, but the core is Jesus, and the focus is Jesus, and the eyes and the passion, and what allows you to push through the crowd, what allows you to break the roof, what allows you to lower the mat is Jesus.
That's powerful. And I couldn't have said it any better myself.
That's awesome.
Thanks, man. Oh, thank you. God,
Yeah, bro.
I'm encouraged.
Yeah,
Appreciate you, man.
Really enjoyed doing this tonight, man. It's been all of our pleasure. So
yeah, we just need to hang out sometime too, and I'll try to catch you at Butts. Are you training this week?
I am. Yeah, we'll be inside most mornings because it's just super cold still, but we'll get there around 9. I've got 2 Swiss Olympic long jumpers that are here with me.
Wow.
Training right now for training camp. So really good guys, man. Been kind of fun to just see. I don't really know where they are with their walk with the Lord. If any one of them speaks really good English, one of them doesn't. We're with them all the time. We're praying before meals. We're talking about our faith. inviting them to church. They didn't come, but we invited them. So
Yeah.
just
You never
we're
know,
putting
man. I
things
mean,
out there, and so it's
yeah.
just
You never know.
shoot
I
your
mean,
shot,
just,
bro.
yeah, exactly. I mean, they know where you stand, and you never know how that can pay dividends over time, and what God can do with that time together. Cool, man. We'll stay in touch, and just appreciate you, and we'll be sure to push the TED Talk as we mentioned. But thanks a lot, man. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Jarryd.
Thanks,
Enjoyed
Jarryd.
it, buddy.
Yeah, Daniel, for sure. It's nice meeting you.
What's up, y'all? This is Daniel with Carry the Mat Podcast. Thanks for joining us again today. We really hope y'all enjoyed the content that we brought to y'all from Jarryd and his story of inspiration. Join us next week on Monday when we drop our next podcast. Follow and like our Instagram, Carry the Mat, and remember to follow and like us on all our platforms. We're on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcast. Thanks. See y'all soon.